few days ago, the soccer world was processing something nobody had calculated before the tournament. Cape Verde, an archipelago of just over 500,000 inhabitants off the coast of Senegal, qualified for the round of 32 of its first World Cup in history. And when the referee blew the final whistle on the 0-0 draw against Saudi Arabia, and the screens at Houston Stadium confirmed Uruguay's defeat against Spain, the entire stadium exploded. The Cape Verde players cried, hugged each other, looked up to the sky, and at the center of it all was him, Vozinha, the 40-year-old goalkeeper worth €50,000 on the market, who plays in Portugal's second division, who has carried the nickname Little Grandma since he was a kid in Mindelo, because he would run to take shelter at his grandparents' house when things got difficult. The man who, in this World Cup, went from being completely unknown to 99% of the planet to having nearly 14 million followers on Instagram. And when he was asked about Argentina, when the journalist told him that the next opponent in the round of 32 was Lionel Messi's team, Vozinha said something nobody expected. In the chaos of the celebration, with his teammates hugging each other, with his mother already in the United States after everything that had happened with the visa, with the Houston Stadium still vibrating with the energy of the historic qualification. At that exact moment, the question came, and Vozinha answered, "Best match possible. We have nothing to lose and everything to gain. We are going to go out onto the field with the same mentality we had against Spain, against Uruguay, and against Saudi Arabia, with order, with courage, and with the conviction that we can compete against any opponent in this tournament." Up to that point, it was a logical, respectful answer from a goalkeeper who understands the size of the challenge, but then Vozinha went further. And what he said next is what turned that statement into something completely different from anything else heard in this tournament. I have to be honest, I have been a Messi fan for many years. Since I was young, I watched him play and wondered how it was possible for someone to do what he did with a ball. I followed him at Barcelona. I followed him in the qualifiers with Argentina. I followed him in every World Cup, and I always thought he was the most extraordinary player soccer had produced in its entire history. Stop at that statement. Vozinha is 40 years old. He is exactly from the generation that saw Messi grow from his first matches with the Argentine national team, from his first dribbles at Barcelona, from the first Ballon d'Or awards that changed the debate over the greatest of all time. And that kid from Mindelo who, when he was young, watched Messi on television, who followed his career for almost 20 years from the least glamorous corners of world soccer, reached a World Cup, and soccer prepared the biggest surprise someone in his position could receive. The next opponent is Messi's team. Sharing a field with Leo Messi in a World Cup is something I dreamed about for many years. I didn't think it was going to be possible. When you are a goalkeeper in Angola, in Moldova, in Cyprus, you don't think that one day you are going to be on the same field as the best player in history in a round of 32 match at a World Cup. This is something that goes beyond soccer for me. That phrase from Vozinha says everything that needs to be said about what this matchup represents for them. It is not just Argentina against Cape Verde, it is not just the world champion against one of the least valuable national teams in the tournament. It is the goalkeeper who spent 20 years on the margins of world soccer, reaching the moment where he is going to stand face-to-face with the player he always admired from afar. And that, in the language of soccer, and in human language, is exactly the kind of story that cannot be invented. Then came the phrase that went the most viral, the one that, within minutes, traveled across every media outlet in the world and turned Vozinha's statement into the most talked-about comment of the last few days in world soccer. That statement is the most honest any goalkeeper in soccer history has ever made about the possibility of conceding a goal to Messi. Not the defensive denial of the goalkeeper who says he is going to stop everything. Not the diplomacy of someone pretending he does not feel anything special at the prospect of facing him. The genuine acceptance of someone who understands that, in any case, whether he wins or loses, whether Messi scores or does not score, July 3rd in Miami is going to be one of the biggest nights of his life. And that mentality, the mentality of enjoying the moment instead of fearing it, is exactly what made Cape Verde so dangerous throughout the entire group stage. Because teams that have no fear are the hardest to neutralize tactically. They do not calculate, they do not manage, they play. And Vozinha has just told the world that on July 3rd in Miami, he is going to go out and play without calculating anything. But Vozinha's words about Argentina cannot be fully understood without the context of everything he experienced over the last 2 weeks. Because every statement this man makes is loaded with a story that amplifies its weight, dimensions that any other person in his place would not be able to reach. The goalkeeper explained his emotion after the debut with a phrase that went viral. "I cried because my mother could not be here because of the visa. Because of the money we had to pay, we could not process it in time." That image of the goalkeeper crying because his mother could not be in the stands to watch him play the most important match of his life is what came before everything that followed. The mother who finally got the visa, the mother who arrived in Miami and reunited with her son at training with tears that no camera could ignore. The mother who was in the stands when Cape Verde drew with Uruguay and who, on July 3rd in Miami, is going to be there again while her son tries to stop Messi's shots. Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader of the United States House of Representatives, publicly intervened so the process could be unblocked. And that turned the matchup into something soccer does not often produce. And here we have to talk about something that Vozinha's statements should not make anyone forget. Because behind the emotion and the admiration for Messi and the words about enjoying the moment, there is a team that, in 3 matches, did something very few people thought possible. It went through a group stage undefeated, a group that had Spain and Uruguay. And that is not done with heart alone. Cape Verde advanced as second in Group H, undefeated with a 0-0 draw against Spain, a 2-2 draw against Uruguay, and a 0-0 draw against Saudi Arabia, with a population of just over 500,000 inhabitants. 3 matches without losing against the champion of Europe, against the 2-time world champion, and against Saudi Arabia. Undefeated. That is not luck. That is a system. A coach named Bubista, who designed a defensive block so disciplined that Spain, with 74% of the ball and more than 800 completed passes, could not score even 1 goal. And Vozinha as the last resort. 7 saves against Spain. A huge performance against Uruguay, where Cape Verde equalized twice after falling behind, and the 0-0 against Saudi Arabia that sealed qualification. That is the opponent Argentina has in front of it on July 3rd in Miami, not just the Messi fan goalkeeper who is going to enjoy the match. An organized, disciplined team without pressure and with the momentum of the biggest story Cape Verdean soccer has ever lived. And Vozinha in goal with the confidence of someone who knows he can stop whatever comes his way, because he already stopped everything Spain threw at him. And now we have to talk about the duel within the match, the most poetic of all the ones this World Cup can produce in the round of 32. Messi against Vozinha, the all-time top scorer in World Cup history, against the most viral goalkeeper of the tournament. The one with 19 World Cup goals against the one who stopped 7 shots from Spain in a single match. Vozinha said he is going to enjoy it, that if Messi scores against him, he will be able to say that Messi scored against him in a round of 32 match at the World Cup. And that statement, which on the surface sounds like the resignation of someone who already accepts the result, is actually exactly the opposite. It is the statement of someone who understands the moment with a depth very few players in his position could have. Because Vozinha knows something tactical analysts do not always calculate, that goalkeepers who go onto the field without fear are the ones elite forwards find the most difficult. That Messi, who for 20 years faced goalkeepers who feared him, who built their entire strategy around the fear of making a mistake, is going to have in front of him a 40-year-old man who says he is going to enjoy it. And that difference in mentality can produce results that no mathematical model can predict. So here is the full picture of what Vozinha said about the next match against Argentina. A 40-year-old goalkeeper who has been a Messi fan for decades, who followed his career from the farthest corners of world soccer, who never thought he was going to be on the same field as him, and who, when he was told that the next opponent in the round of 32 was Argentina, instead of talking about tactics or defensive plans, said he was going to enjoy it a lot. We have nothing to lose and everything to gain. We are going to go out onto the field with the same mentality we had against Spain, against Uruguay, and against Saudi Arabia. With order, with courage, and with the conviction that we can compete against any opponent in this tournament. That statement is the most human one this World Cup has produced, the most honest, the one that best captures what soccer can do when stories are built the right way. Now he is going to take the field in Miami on July 3rd with his mother in the stands, in front of Messi, in the round of 32 of the World Cup, to enjoy the biggest moment of his life. Soccer does not produce stories like this very often, and when it does, the only possible response is to stand still and watch them, with the same emotion with which Vozinha is going to look at Messi when the referee calls for the start of the match. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and give it a good like. See you in the next video.